What's up, everyone? I'm Mike Roach of MJR Sports Cards, and this is episode 1 of the MJR Sports Card Show. Today, I'm going to start off going 3 up, giving you 3 prospects who I think are undervalued in the hobby right now, and then I'm going to counter with 3 down, 3 players who I think are overvalued or should be sold. Before we get started, though, I want to make a note. All the numbers that I'm using are my own, compiled only from eBay. The total sales number are all the total sales of a player's first Bowman Chrome autograph card, regardless of color, serial number, or grade. The average value, however, is only from a player's raw, ungraded first Bowman Chrome autograph card. That way, I'm kind of able to set the floor on the least amount of money you should expect to pay when buying in on a player. If you have any more questions or want further clarification, you can be sure to hit me up on Twitter at MJR Sports Cards or check out my website, mjrsportscards.com. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get going with 3 up.
We're going to do this today. Good work.
The Cleveland Indians are rich with middle infield prospects, but it's 22-year-old Tyler Freeman that leads the way amongst them. Ranked number 76 by MLB Pipeline and 82 by Baseball America, all he's done so far this year is slash .322, .376, .463 with only 17 strikeouts for AA Akron. Yet, he was still left out of the futures game. The baseball card hobby seems to be snubbing Freeman as well. His 2018 Bowman Chrome Auto currently sits in the $25 to $30 range and has for most of the year. His total sales numbers aren't that impressive either. This past June was the first time he broke 40 sales in a month, and it doesn't look like he's going to repeat that feat in July. I believe that collectors are low on Freeman because of the sheer number of middle infielders in Cleveland's system, but I wouldn't let that scare you too much. He's done a lot to prove himself as the man in the middle going forward, and I would definitely buy in on him ahead of his anticipated 2022 arrival.
Vaughn from the windup. Swung on and missed.
Angels prospect Brandon Marsh recently made his debut, and I'm really hoping that leads to the hobby recognition he deserves. Heading into the season, Baseball Prospectus had him ranked as the number 44 overall prospect, Baseball America had him at number 57, and MLB Pipeline had him at the number 38 prospect in baseball. And while he hasn't exactly lit the world on fire, in the last 8 games since returning from the IL, he slashed .382, .417, .735, with hits in all 8 games. The injury bug has kind of been what's plagued him throughout his career, though. And while he's never had any major issues, a couple of tweaks here, a string here, has kind of kept his value low. His total sales numbers are usually somewhere in the mid to upper 30s each month, and his value sits comfortably in the $40 to $60 range, although that has risen slowly throughout the season. His 2018 Bowman Chrome Auto, I think, is one of the most overlooked cards in the hobby right now. And if he's able to stay in the lineup once Mike Trout and Justin Upton return to Los Angeles, I see a lot of value gaining in the near future.
Wild thing delivered.
The Milwaukee Brewers don't have the strongest farm system in the league, but that doesn't mean that they should be overlooked either. Top prospect Bryce Terrain entered the season as the number 74 prospect on MLB Pipeline's list and number 73 for Baseball America. So far this year, he's batted .276, .335, .391, and has the 3rd most hits in the AA South. Now, he might not be as sexy as fellow prospects Garrett Mitchell or Hedbert Perez, but I do think Terrain has some of the best value in the hobby right now. He might never be a superstar due to his lack of power, but his MLB pedigree and his ability to hit and get on base should provide him with a long and successful MLB career. Currently, his 2018 Bowman Draft Auto sits around $25 to $30, and while it might never go to the moon due to his lack of power, I do think it will eventually be worth more than $30. If you're looking for a guy with low risk, even if it is with somewhat limited upside, Bryce Terrain is the guy for you. Gavin Lux isn't exactly a prospect anymore, but he is a former top 5 prospect, now technically in his sophomore season. He hasn't really seen significant time in the majors until this season, so his numbers are still worth tracking, even if those numbers haven't really been great on a baseball or hobby side. He was recently placed on the 10-day IL, but before that, he was only hitting .227, .307, .349 so far this season, which was actually an improvement over his short stint with the Dodgers last year, so it's fair to say that he struggled a bit to adjust to the majors. Fortunately for him, the Dodgers have a talented enough roster to cover for Lux and provide him time to grow and develop as a player. Unfortunately, the hobby has not been so forgiving. His sales numbers reached a high water mark in March, with 70 total sales, and they've declined every month since then. As interest has waned, his value has decreased as well. Entering the season, his 2016 Bowman draft card averaged $195.41. The 10 most recent sales averaged only $101.56, with half of those clocking in below $90. Now, there's still lots of time for him to grow and develop as a player, but if you're buying his cards right now, you're probably either a Dodgers fan or playing the extremely long game. And if neither of those situations apply to you, I recommend staying as far away from Gavin Lux as possible.
1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out.
Perhaps no other prospect proves that collectors love power more so than Blaze Jordan. The Red Sox prospect has been hitting 500-foot bombs since he was 13 years old and was the 2019 National High School Home Run Derby champion. This prodigious power led the Red Sox to make him the youngest player selected in the MLB draft when they took him in the 3rd round of the 2020 draft. He made his hobby debut shortly after in 2021 Bowman, where he was one of the most anticipated names in the product, but I believe one of the most overhyped. His card value averaged almost $325 in the first week after release, and since then, the 10 most recent sales have just barely averaged over $150. Now, it's pretty normal for card values to drop for the first couple of months after release, but in the case of Jordan, I believe this drop is going to continue. He's an 18-year-old 3rd rounder with a lot of hype built on YouTube videos and the Red Sox brand, to be honest. The hobby's not too high on him either. In one of my recent Prospect Pulse Twitter polls, 97% of 38 voters believe that his value will either stay the same or decrease before the end of the season. I'm not saying that he's not going to be a good player. He's obviously very young and has a strong tool set to work with. But if you're ripping 2021 Bowman and you're lucky enough to hit a Blaze Jordan auto, I would tell you to sell that now unless you're willing to sit on it for more than a couple of years.
1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out.
Vidal Brujan has provided a lot of value to collectors this season, depending on when you bought in on him. Over the offseason, he was ranked number 67 by Baseball Prospectus, 56 by Baseball America, and number 50 by MLB Pipeline, and his 2020 Bowman autograph card averaged about $55 for the base version. All in all, he was a pretty budget-friendly prospect in a Tampa Bay system loaded with expensive players. All that went out the window in May, though, when he began to prove himself in AAA Durham. His value skyrocketed, with several sales as high as $175. He got the call up to the bigs July 7th, and his value has gone down slightly since then, but still averages $142.59. He's also struggled slightly out the gate, but it's still been less than 10 games, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. There's still plenty of time to add value. However, if you're one of the 115 eBayers who bought his card between January and April of this year, now is the time to sell. Not because he's a bad player or he won't do well, not because he's overhyped. I'm simply out on Brujan because of the one top rules of prospect card buying. Don't get greedy.
1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out.
Alright, that's all I got for episode 1. Let me know in the comments whether you agree or disagree with the 3 up or 3 down, or if there's anyone else you think might be a hidden gem that you want me to talk about next time. If you also like the content, be sure to follow along on Twitter at MJR Sports Cards. I'm putting out charts and prospects every day, and on Sundays I put out these prospect pulse polls where we get really good information on how the hobby is doing and what they're thinking about certain players. The more people we have voting in those, the more accurate the results will be. So be sure to follow along and vote in those. Also hit that like button, share it out to everybody you know, and I'll see you next time on the MJR Sports Card Show.
Will you sign my husband's baseball card for me?
Hey, great to meet you.